Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our co-main event for UFC Vancouver. In this matchup, we have Kevin Holland taking on Canada's Mike Malott. Holland is 28-14 as a professional, 2-3 in his last five fights. Meanwhile, Malott is 12-2-1 as a professional, 4-1 in his last five fights. Looking at Kevin Holland's last five. He loses to Roman Dolidze via a rib injury at UFC 307. And then these next four fights are all in this year. In January at UFC 311, he loses via submission to De Ridder. Then Holland moves back down to welterweight, wins against Gunnar Nelson via decision in March, submits Vicente Luque in June at UFC 316, and then most recently lose a awesome fight to Daniel Rodriguez at UFC 318 in July. Now this will be Holland's fifth fight in a year, and now, granted, he's done it before and still holds the record for most wins in a calendar year at 5. Meanwhile, looking at Mike Malott, he was undefeated in the UFC for a good little bit, submitting Johan Lainez and Adam Fugit. Then in his only loss in the UFC, in one of the biggest upsets of last year, loses via TKO to Neil Magny at UFC 297, which was, I think, a humbling experience for Malott and made him realize, you can't go for the finish all the time. Sometimes you just need to do enough to win the decision. And you saw it in his next fight after that last November to Trevin Giles. Granted, not the most exciting performance, but he did fight with a bit more safety first approach and didn't go overzealous for the finish. Then most recently got back to his finishing ways in May at UFC 315 when he knocked out Charles Radtke. Boy. Here's the trick about trying to predict a Kevin Holland fight. It comes down to what Kevin Holland am I going to get? Because either it could be the Kevin Holland who fights like a donk and makes just terrible decisions like against MVP or Jack Della Maddalena, or I can get the really good Kevin Holland who lives up to his potential and uses all of his skills, like against Vicente Luque or against Gunnar Nelson, against Buckley when they fought at middleweight, to Jacare. It really depends on what Kevin Holland we get. That's the trick. But objectively, not, trying to predict, what am I going to get? Am I going to flip the coin and see what I get? And looking just at his skill set, Kevin Holland is a very good, well-rounded finisher. Now, obviously, I think he's a much better fighter at 170 than he is at 180, and that's not groundbreaking news. Everyone kind of knows this. Looking at his overall skills, Holland is a pretty good Muay Thai striker. His main weapon is that right hand, and with an 81-inch reach, he uses it very well. It's kind of like swinging wrecking balls. That's what it feels like sometimes. Like in his knockout of Santiago Ponzinibbio, when he just leaped in with a long left hook and caught Ponzinibbio perfectly on the chin. I mean, shoot, he's got some real power, even when on his back. I mean, that famous knockout to Jacare where Holland is literally flat on his back, literally lifts himself up, big right hand hits the jaw of Jacare and knocks him out. So, I mean, like I said, now fighters are more cautious nowadays of that, and they don't give Holland a chance to do that. But that still speaks to the power he has, even on his back, which should not be possible. But Holland's able to do it. Now, Holland's not the best wrestler, nor is he the best defensive wrestler. Even at 170, a lot of fighters can take him down, but they do struggle a bit more than at 185, where those guys are just much bigger and stronger than Holland and are able to easily wrestle him and keep him there. I mean, Derek Brunson did it. Dolidze did it. Rainier did it. Who was it? Brendan Allen and Hamza. Now, I know some of those are some of the most elite grapplers you can think of, but it's still a lot of fighters are just able to keep Holland down and keep him there, especially at middleweight. At 170, they can do it, like Gunnar Nelson did it, but it's not as easy as it is. Plus, Holland is very offensive off his back, not just with the strikes that he does from bottom, but also throwing up kicks, triangles, armbar. Now, he is a Travis Lutter black belt, so he does have a good offensive guard, and Holland showed it at times, like when he submitted Mikhail Alexiuchuk at UFC 302 via armbar after getting dropped. That's another thing about Holland. He has one hell of a chin. I'm thinking of like just that all that damage he took in the Daniel Rodriguez fight, and he was still up and able to fight at the third round after getting dropped twice in the second. And if nothing else, I do think Kevin Holland has heart, and he does try and fight to win. Now it's just he doesn't always fight to the potential most people know he has. That's always the trick. I would say some people might disagree, but I do think Kevin Holland is like the next Donald Cerrone or Cowboy Cerrone, a fighter who truly does embody the I'll fight anyone, anytime, any place. Man, I'm thinking of how many short notice fights he's taken, how quick of a turnabout he's taken. I mean, shoot, feels like he fights every 90 days or less. As I said, in this year alone, he fought from January to March. That's about 3 months, roughly. Then March to June, another 3 months. And then June to July in about a month. Actually, even less than a month. So, as I said, the consistency is very Cowboy-esque. Shoot, even fighting in two different weight classes back and forth, like how Cowboy did it at lightweight to welterweight, with Holland doing it to welterweight to middleweight. Very similar. And then, the flashes of brilliance that Cowboy was able to do, Holland does the same. And then the very disappointing losses, same with Holland. Holland is, and even by his own admission, a good gatekeeper and a good journeyman. But hey, you know what? I tell you what. By the time he ends his career, he's probably going to end up being rich with all the performance bonuses he gets, as well as all the paychecks he's getting, either saving the UFC by stepping in on short notice or helping fill out a card. All right, so he may be a journeyman, but I tell you what, he might retire as a rich journeyman. Depends. I've heard, you hear about his lifestyle and how much money he spends. So, who am I to say? Now, looking at Mike Malott, very good, well-rounded fighter. Mostly fights out of Team Alpha Male, and it shows with his grappling. Specifically, that Alpha Male style guillotine, where once they get that neck and start rolling, it's kind of a wrap. Especially if Malott's able to roll into full mount as well. I mean, shoot, even his guillotine from the bottom is tight as a drum, and is able to get the tap. I would say Malott is much better of a submission artist than a knockout artist. Now, that being said, he has really good power, and he fills out great for this division. Kind of crazy to think that he fought at featherweight at one point in his MMA career. I would say Mike Malott's striking is overall pretty good. He's a pretty good counter striker, like that left hook he knocked out Mickey Gall with, or the kicks he was able to employ against Trevin Giles, just constantly keeping it at bay with long kicks to the head, body, leg, consistently. But I do think Mike Malott's best attributes would be his submission grappling and overall his killer instinct. He's got really good killer instinct, whether it's finding the submission, like I said, his guillotines are nice, his arm triangles, or just that well-placed knockout shot, or his ability to start lining up shots for the knockout. Specifically, you notice in the Charles Radke fight, where Malott was mostly throwing a jab cross, he eventually, by the second round, he added a third strike, jab, cross, then the hook. That knocked Radke out of his senses, and then went on to the ground and pound finish. So Malott really has good killer instinct and pretty good offensive wrestling. For the majority of the fight, he was able to out wrestle Neil Magny and keep him down and have overall the better positional control. It's just he got tired by the end of the fight, and that's how Magny was able to reverse and get the TKO himself. But it looks like Malott is much better at managing his cardio. As you can see, specifically in those Trevin Giles and Charles Radke fight, he doesn't overexert himself too much. He doesn't try to impose his will as much, and doesn't get overzealous trying to get the finish. He takes his time, he picks his spots better, and once he does find the finish, he goes for it. He doesn't just hunt it consistently, because the trick about a good finisher is that once the opportunity presents itself, they take it. Now, obviously a good finisher makes fighters make the mistakes to lead to a finish. But a fighter who is overzealous for the finish, whether it be swinging wild when his opponent's hurt, or constantly going for the submissions, even when they're kind of low percentage or the opponent's starting to get out, it does drain your energy quite a bit. But it's those calculated technical predators that are great finishers. They know that they can make their reads, make their opponents make mistakes, and then find the kill shot. And I think Mike Malott is evolving into that type of fighter. I really do. Now, again, didn't finish Trevin Giles, but coming back from the first loss of his UFC career and kind of a humbling loss at that. I can assume that it's going to be kind of a he's going to fight more tentative. Plus, also in that fight, Trevor Giles was fighting super safe after getting knocked out by Carlos Prates. So I can't say it's all Mike Malott's fault for not getting a finish. The trick, like I said, man, it really depends what Kevin Holland I'm going to get in this fight. So I guess objectively, right? If Kevin Holland's in good shape, he's not too battered from that D-Rod fight, which was July. This is October, so roughly 3 months. And we get, a focused Kevin Holland. I feel like when Kevin Holland's really in the flow, he will talk. Obviously, he's big mouth for a reason. He does love to talk. And especially it doesn't matter if he's on bottom, getting struck, does not matter. He will talk. But I feel like when he's just talking, having fun in there, I feel like that's when Kevin Holland's at his best. I swear, one of the best performances I've seen of Kevin Holland recently was his fight to Vicente Luque. Now, I understand Vicente Luque is not the same, but you saw how Kevin Holland more or less dominated that fight, from being able to defend the single legs with powerful punches to Luque's head, to the elbows in close that led that damn hematoma that was the size of a golf ball, or actually large, and softball was more accurate, on the side of Luque's head, to being able to snatch up the anaconda against a guy with the most front headlock chokes in the UFC. That's what I felt like I wouldn't say prime Kevin Holland, that's not the right word, but like a focused Kevin Holland is. That actually reminds me, that's probably his best submissions too, is his front headlocks, specifically his Darcis / Anaconda. That's how he was able to get like Michael Chiesa, Tim Means, excuse me, and as well as Vicente Luque. So his front headlocks are pretty good, similar to Mike Malott's. Now looking at the odds, it's pretty much a pick'em, plus 100 for Holland, minus 115 for Malott. It makes sense. Holland's going to be the bigger guy at 6'3" with the 81-inch reach, while Malott's going to be 6'1" with the 73-inch reach. Ah, boy. I swear, this feels like one of those fights where I'm like, no matter who I pick, I'm going to feel like an idiot. Because if I pick Malott and he loses to Holland, I'm like, man, I guess Malott maybe isn't like top 15 level, or just I knew Kevin Holland was going to be good today. And then if I pick Kevin Holland, he loses, like I'm trusting one of the most unreliable fighters I can think of. Because boy, when Kevin Holland is on point, he's really fucking good. When he's not on point, it makes you question why you picked him. That's just the beauty of it, I guess. But I don't know, objectively, like not thinking, am I going to get good or bad? And just looking at their overall skill sets, I'm going to slightly lean Kevin Holland. No, this is one of my least confident picks on the whole card. And I do think of myself how I would pick flip it maybe. But I feel like Kevin Holland has certain advantages in this fight Malott is not used to. One, he's going to have while Malott fought Magny, and Magny is of similar height and stature to Holland, obviously Kevin Holland hits much harder. It's probably, I would say, Holland is easily the most dangerous opponent, on paper anyway. Mike Malott says fake, because Malott hasn't fought anyone with the same power as Kevin Holland, nor someone who utilizes his reach like Holland. Magny, yeah, he utilizes his reach as well, mostly in that persistent jab of his, but most of his height and reach advantage to his opposition is in the clinch. Holland doesn't fight like that. Now, he will use the clinch, and he will use really good elbows, especially on the break. But Holland's striking style is mostly revolved around using that long range of his and just not bulldozing, picking up parts of the opponent at range, as well as just swinging those fucking hammers he has for arms. And usually just getting those long swinging knockouts. Now, I do think Malott is going to be a bit more technical than Holland and a bit more safety first, while Holland, I feel like, while, yeah, he does have good defense, mostly relies on the chin, which is concerning for me, especially considering how short of a turnabout his fight with De Ridder is, considering how much damage he took. I do worry about that. But again, I think Holland is easily the most dangerous fighter Malott has ever faced, especially in terms of power and in terms of being a submission threat. Because I could think if this fight goes on for long, maybe Mike Malott's cardio starts to fail him, and he might shoot for a sloppy takedown and then Holland cinches up, the Darce, Anaconda, whatever it might be. And just taking advantage of a poor decision from Malott. Honestly, I think the biggest advantages for Holland, I think outweigh what Mike Malott should theoretically do better than Holland. So my official prediction, I'm going to go Kevin Holland. I'm going to pick him via knockout. I think he can line up just the right shot to really hurt Malott and win a lot of minutes off the rounds with his more active striking, with his more dangerous striking. And even in the grappling department, as I said, fighters at welterweight are able to out-wrestle Kevin Holland for sure, but not as easily as as middleweight. And I think Holland will be able to fend off most of the wrestling of Malott and even be able to fight to sort of a stalemate in the grappling. Now, being on your back is not going to win you minutes, not going to win you control time in MMA. But I do think the offensive guard of Kevin Holland is going to be very tricky for Malott, especially with those long lands for those up kicks, his punches from the bottom, and even some of his submissions on bottom. So overall, again, I'm going to pick Kevin Holland, and I think I'm going to pick him via knockout. I do think he's going to line up the right hand and knock out Malott. But with that being said, that's been my prediction for this fight. If you liked the video, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Do you think Kevin Holland has a shot? What version of Kevin Holland do you think we're going to get? Or do you think Mike Malott will break into the top 15 with a win over Kevin Holland? Next up, we'll have our main event, Rainier De Ridder taking on Brendan Allen. But until then, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. Take care.